Hello, everyone. Welcome to Candlemaker Happy Hour. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 things you should never use in your candles. My name is Kevin, Armatage Candle Company. I'm honored that you are spending your time with me today. Before we start, I'll go through the subject. We'll kind of talk about what we talk about. But before we go into everything, I just want to say, if you're kind of getting into candle making, or maybe you're on the fringe, getting a little excited about it, and you're learning about testing, and you're like, I need to test my candles, but I don't know what to do. Well, there is an industry standard test that's in the US, and that standard test does outline very specific criteria that you need to follow for testing. And I've got some videos about it, I've got an article about it, but I also have a free PDF template for that. I'm having a little technical difficulties on Instagram, so I apologize, guys. YouTube seems fine, so just bear with me. We can always watch the replay. But if you want that standard PDF template, it's yours. It's free. You can just take it, copy it, and paste it if you want, and make your own. There's no branding on it, but it does capture all of the ASTM 2417 requirements and a couple other things you might want to think about. If you want it, just go to armatagecandlecompany.com/burn test, burn-test. That's all I want to say about that, but it's valuable. It's a great tool. And if you're unsure about testing, I think it's a great way to kind of inform you on what you really need when you test your candles. So let's get into it. Let's dive in. I'll go through the subject, and then if you've got questions, pop them up in the chat. When I'm through, I'll hop into those and do my best to answer it. If you're watching a replay, then feel free to leave a comment, and I will get to that if the community doesn't answer it before I get a chance. So here we go. 3 things you shouldn't use in candle making. So candles are awesome, and like the age of information means that we can find out just about anything we want. And that includes how to make candles. That also includes how to change my car tire or how to bake zucchini bread. You know, anything you want is out there. But that also means that anything that's out there can be put out by anybody. We don't always know if we can trust it. And there is some information about candle making that is a little misleading, a little scary. And today I want to address a few of those things that you might see, or maybe you've heard, or maybe you've done it even, and you realize not a good thing to do, and kind of call out those items for what they are, why I don't think they're rooted in any sort of ill intention. I think that a lot of people, they learn a certain way, they think it's just okay, and they go about it. So it's more of a lack of education. So we're going to tackle those and try to wrap our arms around why those might not be good ideas, but also what to do instead, maybe how to handle that same problem a different way. And like, I think of Pinterest, holy cow, you can find anything on Pinterest. It's a great place. If you aren't there doing stuff, I mean, for a long time I avoided it. I thought it was for girls, you know, but turns out guys can find stuff too. I happen to also make candles, which plays well with the Pinterest crowd as well, so I try to put out my own content there as well. I don't want to get too distracted. Anyways, on Pinterest, you'll find a lot of candle making tutorials that have some of these items that we go into. So the first one of the bigger ones, is that you really shouldn't use pigment-based colors for your candles. Pigment-based colors. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of color theory. I'm not a color expert. This is my survey of information, my understanding, my experience. If you have anything valuable to share, I would love to hear that. Like, let me know. Or if I'm saying something completely wrong, I would also want to hear that. But I'm pretty good at keeping my mouth closed when I'm not sure. I try to do that. So pigment-based colors. So 2 types of colors exist. There's pigments and there's dyes. Pigments and dyes. And this is more than candles. This is like a ton of areas. Printing is a big one. Pigments and dyes. Tinted windows use pigments or dyes. What's the difference? Well, pigments are not soluble. They don't dissolve. They more like a powder, and so they don't soluble, they don't combine with other mediums like water or oil. And dyes they're kind of the opposite. They are soluble. They do dissolve. That's what we use in candle making is candle dye. I'm sure many of you have used it. You use candle dye to color your candle. Soy, not so great for colors. It'll take it, but it's kind of pastel. Paraffin colors pretty well. It's a good wax for that. And palm is beautiful. Feathers so well. But what's the problem with pigment-based colors? Well, dyes are fine. They blend with our candle wax very well, and they work very well. But if we think about a candle, and I happen to have a wick with me today, if we think about a candle wick and like the purpose it serves, it is transporting fuel from the melted wax up to the flame. And this is candle 101, or maybe you don't know this, but that's what this is doing. I think of this as like a highway. You've got all of your cars, which is in your wax blend, moving along this highway, your fragrance oil, your color is all in there. When you melt down the wax, it's color, it's fragrance, it's the whole thing. And this highway needs to stay uncongested. We need to allow traffic through to the flame. If we lose the traffic, or if there's too much traffic or not enough traffic, the flame will suffer or be dangerous even. And so when we build a candle blend, when we add our ingredients, we don't want to put anything that will disrupt this highway too much. All of us have made bad candles. If you made a few candles, you've made some bad candles. You've had issues with your wick. And dyes are good. They play well. They don't disrupt. But pigments they don't dissolve. They're there. They're sitting in the wax. They're at their smallest thing. They're a particle that's just sitting there. Maybe really small and naked to the eye, but they're there. The problem is, whereas a dye might be like a smart car, pigments are like a giant, oversized semi-truck with wider than the freeway sometimes. One or two is okay. One or two on this imaginary highway would be fine. You could kind of work your way around it and get through. But you get too many of those on the highway and it'll jam it up. What am I saying? I'm saying that pigments will clog the wick. And a lot of you may know that. Pigment-based color will clog the wick. Why? Because the wick is trying to transport, and because those aren't dissolving in the fluid that's going through the wick, it will clog. And there won't be any traffic going through to the flame. The flame won't receive any fuel. It'll just go out. And there's varying degrees of this. There's sometimes pigments that can behave decently, but for the most part, pigments are going to be disruptive to your flame health. Okay. So we're talking about flames, or we're talking about pigments. Like who cares, right? I mean, if I buy Candle Science dye or Lone Star, wherever I go, it's going to be a dye. I don't have to worry about that, right? Well, wrong, maybe wrong. Because I'll name 3 potential areas you may end up accidentally running into pigment-based color. You might not know it's pigment-based color. The first is crayons, right? We all love crayons. We used crayons, like most of us learned how to write on crayons. I wrote my first love letter with a crayon. I was in 1st grade. And crayons do really well. Pigments work really well. If you ask Crayola, they'll say, we make our crayons with paraffin wax and pigments. Pigments offer a very wide selection, very wide range of colors, which obviously works well. Who doesn't love Tickle Me Pink? I mean, that's got to be the greatest candle color name ever. But the problem with crayons is exactly what I said. They use pigment-based colors. So if you make a candle 2 ways, you make an entire candle out of crayons, you're going to suffer. And we're talking wicked candles. Wax melts is a different story. But wicked candles, thought I had one here. Here we go. If you make this entire puppy out of crayons, it may look beautiful. It probably will. Right? That color is very brilliant, maybe the right word. But as soon as you light that wick and some of the wax melts and it starts to draw that up, those pigments are going to jam quick. I think it's funny because if you look at tutorials online, they're like, make your candles out of crayons. They're beautiful. They're great. what you'll find is they take the picture like 2 seconds after they light the wick. Like you never see like a crayon candle that burned halfway down or like, you know, anything that burned for more than a few seconds. And I don't know why they do that and they think it's like, fine, are they blowing it out right away? I don't know what they're doing, but that's just the science of it. We don't have wicks today, the way wicks are built, designed and operating, that can handle that flow of pigments because they don't dissolve, right? Some people say, okay, well, what if I just use one crayon? Like, I just want the color. Well, pigments kind of relate to the second item I'm going to mention. Pigments are going to settle in the wax blend. They don't blend, right? They're not going to be part of your wax, fragrance, and then all of that. Even if you mix it well, it's going to settle. It wants to. It's heavier. It's more dense. And so if you add a crayon, what you'll probably find, and I would love to see people's results of this, but what you'll probably find is that the color from that crayon will separate from the wax. It'll sit on the bottom, and you'll have a very distinct, here's my candle, here's my crayon color. Your mileage may vary. Honestly, I haven't made zero with crayons. Like, that's the truth. I've watched some people do it. I've done some research on it, but like, to me, it's obvious. It's a no-no. So I haven't personally experimented with it, which is why I find it interesting. No one's taking pictures of their crayon candles later. More for decoration, I would say. That settling draws into the second item that is pigment-based color that a lot of people may not realize, and that's mica powder. And while beautiful, if anyone's using it, while beautiful, it doesn't work well as the main colorant in a candle either. It's pigment. It's the same problem. In a wax melt, great. If you want to use it, you can take that mica powder and use it as a side decoration of the candle, if that makes sense. Like, you make the candle, you don't add the powder until after the candle's made. Kind of like painting the candle after you made it, right? Because then when you melt the candle, the pigment isn't part of the blend. It's not trying to get through the wick. If it tries to get through the wick, you have too much, you're going to clog the wick. Again, the third thing, this is probably my favorite one, is titanium dioxide, which you're like, what? Who cares? Titanium dioxide? If you don't know, titanium dioxide is like one of the most popular colorants across like every industry that needs colors. And it's a pigment, but it's also the reason there's not really good commercially available white colors for candles. Have you gone shopping for a white colorant? Now, the wax is white, kind of. Soy has a little bit of a cream. Paraffin's decently white. Some palm, you can look all over. But there's not like a white colorant. And I don't know why there's not a white dye, but titanium dioxide, which you can buy from a candle store. You can buy titanium dioxide-based colors. They're still pigments, and they're going to clog your wick as well. It's the reason that we don't have white dyes. And maybe the market's just not big enough, but titanium dioxide, who knew? I think I had it written down here. 4.6 million tons of this stuff are used across food, cosmetics, paint, plastics. It's all over the place. Probably the number one thing that affects your life that you haven't heard of. I'm sure titanium dioxide has made its way into your life. Okay, enough about pigments. So the second thing you should never use in your candles and it's going to seem like common sense, don't use flammable containers. Or more accurately stated, don't use containers that can't handle the heat, right? We're building these awesome machines. And the creativity that I see, I'm not very creative, but the creativity I see, it just extends so far beyond this world. Like, I love seeing all these candles that are made out of who's-its and what's-its, and they look so good. But occasionally you hear a story. You hear a story online. The candle shattered. The container exploded. And at first you're like, no, that must have been an accident. But the reality is there are a lot of people choosing containers for their candles because, shoot, it looks so easy. You can just make a candle out of anything. And that's not totally untrue. You can make a candle out of anything, but the container selection is vitally important. And it's really important because not everything can handle the heat. Two things happen. One, heat is getting trapped in the walls of those containers, and that can affect the integrity of the container by itself. But the other thing is that when something heats up, and if it heats up enough, it'll start to expand. And if it's not flexible enough, or if it's not made out of the right material, it may expand and hit a certain stress point and just explode. And that's why containers will crack or shatter with like seemingly no precursor to that. So something interesting about that. There is, just like with the standard test, there's an ASTM test for container design, glass container design specifically. If anybody knows anything about making glass, it goes kind of like this. Sand is superheated, and that superheated sand is shaped and molded, and then it's cooled very fast. By itself, that still poses a bit of a danger, and that's because as it cools, it's holding on to this pressure that could cause it to just spontaneously blow up. And you apply a little bit of heat to that the wrong way, that could cause further issues. So how does the glass industry solve this? It's a process called annealing, and not annealing on the ground. Now, annealing is a little different for smart people. Do these processes, they design it. They put these super cooled glass containers through another heat treatment process that keeps the shape of that glass and relieves the pressure, relieves it so that at room temperature, that glass isn't holding on to all that pressure and it won't potentially break or, in the worst case, explode. So back to the ASTM standard, that outlines how glass manufacturers that are selling candle containers have the standards they have to meet in order to provide a safe container. Now, you and I, candle maker, we don't have to worry about that, but we should do our due diligence if we're purchasing containers that are made for candles, that they meet our industry standards. And biggest part of that is no one wants to make a candle that could hurt somebody or that could damage property, or, you know, in the worst case, doesn't disperse enough heat that if you were to grab it, it burns you, right? So I'm not trying to squash creativity with this idea or this suggestion that, you know, we should be really diligent with our container selection, because honestly, how many people are buying the same glass containers from Candle Science these days? Like, we have enough of them, right? We need the creativity. That's part of what our industry gives the world, is like interesting things, interesting home pieces of decor, great candles, awesome label design. So I'm not saying don't not be creative. Don't go with the industry, you know, standard 8-ounce jelly jar. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is be very careful with what you're selecting so that you are picking materials that are not going to explode or crack, that can handle the heat. So stay away from wood, unsealed leaky containers, plastics. Obviously, you don't want plastics in there. Just select containers. Glass is a good starting point, but thin-walled glass that isn't really made for that, like a wine glass, they're cool. But if you don't know, if you haven't tested, if you aren't sure, just test, like make a bunch and do that. But just be very careful. Make sure you select containers that you can trust putting in someone else's home, right? And it doesn't stop there. Your insurance company may also want to know what you're making your candles out of too. Okay, enough about that. The final third thing, what I think you should avoid using in candle making always is some embeds, right? People are putting things in their candles as decorations, as really neat side pieces that really pose a little bit of a danger, or they're just really stupid, right? I think on Facebook today, I saw someone for Halloween was creating a wax melt, and it looked like a human toe. And they shaped it was kind of creepy, but they shaped the whole toe out of wax. The whole thing was made out of wax. They painted it with wax and whatever that means. They said they painted it. But like that's great because the wax is just going to melt. It's going to become part of the candle. Awesome. But there are people that are putting things in their candles that are literally flammable, right? Some people are putting in like wood shavings or herbs or dried things. And like, I just shake my head, right? It's like, why are you putting that right? I mean, candles are hot. We need to recognize that. If you wouldn't put it in a fireplace or near a fireplace, don't put it in a candle. So I just want to big caution. It's not like most of us aren't doing this, but like there's two reasons you don't want to do it. First, it's potentially dangerous, or it's something that if you burn it, it just smells horrible. Like a coffee. Has anybody put a coffee bean in a candle? I don't know why I saw that. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's not even how you make coffee. It's not going to smell like coffee. I love coffee beans, but no. So don't put things that either when they burn, they're just going to smell burned, or are literally flammable leaves. You know, they look cool, but don't do that. Or don't put in anything that is going to melt and potentially burn and combust into the air and be unhealthy for people. You know, that's not what you want. Maybe it's not going to just send on fire, but maybe integrating it does pose a risk. So it's just be careful with what you're putting in your candles. An alternate, it's not really good. Like someone more creative than me will have a better idea, but you could have a double-walled container where the main candle sits in one container and your decorations sit on the outside. I would say you could also be very good about, you know, alternate ways of integrating it in one container. I don't know. I'm not very creative, so I won't offer that. It's outside of my wheelhouse. I am relatively traditional. I'll do pillars. I'm not going to go too crazy. Wood wicks, but that's about it. Wood wicks are flammable, but they're supposed to be. So those are my 3 items. Pigment-based colors. What was the second one? Pigment-based colors, containers that are not rated for heat, and embeds that are flammable or just plain stupid. Don't do that. So I want to hear from you. I've got a couple questions I see here, and I'll go through that. If anybody has any other questions, please post. If you're watching a replay, go ahead and leave a comment, and I'll get to it as soon as I can. While you're thinking about that, you know, what are you doing? Are you adding anything cool? Have you had any troubles with your insurance company with anything? Maybe you kind of do it on the DL. Not my business. I don't care what you do, but just be safe. If you haven't had a chance to download the PDF, go to armatagecandlecompany.com/burn test. It's a great resource for getting you started on how to test your candles so that you're meeting the ASTM 2417 standard. That's burn-test if you're wondering. And let me take a look at what we got here for questions. So first question comes from Instagram. Possibly the only question here. What about crystals? Crystals as embeds. Honestly, I don't do it much. I would say my instinct is to think about the source of where it's coming from. It's a glass, I'm guessing a glass-based crystal. That's something that I would think would be very safe. You know, it handles the heat. And if you're unsure about including it, I would just include it in a few tests, run it through, make sure that you feel good about it. The last thing you want is something bad to happen. So I think just being careful with that. If it's an item that maybe a child would want to pull out mid-burn, I'd be very careful about that. I guess I don't know what size crystal it is, but that's just my only thought on that. I think we're good. I enjoyed my time with you guys. I hope you found something of value. Otherwise, we'll see. I'm not sure. I've got some things going on, but next week I may do another happy hour. Tell your friends, tell your people, share the announcement. It was an honor to take 25 minutes of your time tonight or this morning, depending on when you're watching this. And take care. Bye-bye.